Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Debatable with your hosts, Nina and Kyle. I'm Kyle.
I'm Nina.
Okay, this is the first episode that we've done
In a while.
after Debatable Open. The last episode that we recorded was last year.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit rusty about this. So anyway, for this episode, we're going to be talking about our online debate experiences, things that we've learned, things that we wish we could have learned, other things that really impacted us. We wanted to do this episode way before, but we wanted to push it back until after Debatable Open because you wanted to have the ascendancy to say that we have debated and judged and scored for and organized online tournaments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to be counting down our top 5 online debate experiences. Nina will have her own top 5. I'll have my own top 5. It doesn't have to be a good experience or a good memory.
Just
it
a
just
memory.
has to, yeah, it's just a memory as long as it's impactful. Yeah. So I guess I can start with my top 5, which is already kind of weird because the experience is that I don't have this experience. The experience that I want to talk about is the motion from Pop Culture IV, which happened last year, late into last year, where the motion was this house as a hobbit would go on a great adventure or something. And I remember such a great feeling of regret at not joining that tournament because my favorite piece of media ever is Lord of the Rings. Like, whenever I feel down, I listen to Samwise Gamgee's speech at the end of Two Towers. Whenever I want to hype myself up, I listen to several speeches from The Return of the King. And sometimes not even speeches. Sometimes just scenes of people lighting stuff on fire from the third movie. So when I heard about this motion, I felt such a huge amount of regret. Because when I heard about Pop Culture IV, I didn't want to join it because I was afraid that there would be a piece of pop culture that I'm not really familiar with. Because there are a lot of times when we think of pop culture, we also think about music. And I'm not really very well versed in the music industry. Like, I know a little bit of knowledge about, how music is produced. Those sociology perspectives, the Frankfurt School of like, the producers are the gatekeepers, it's formulaic, etc., etc. But like, if you try talking to me about the specifics about the K-pop industry, I will just fail. And it's not because I don't think that it's good or that I don't feel it's not because of some elitist thinking. It's more of I understand it's so important for so many people. I don't want to get into it because I might be listening to it wrong. Do you get that feeling?
I'm a girl. I get that feeling about every nerdy thing.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I didn't initially want to join Pop Culture IV. But when I saw this motion, I was like, man, this would have made every single K-pop or Taylor Swift motion worth it on my end. Even if I wouldn't enjoy debating those motions, this motion would definitely make up for all of that. But I also want to point out there is a really interesting and very nice trend that comes with the shift to online debating. Because when we shifted to online debating, we no longer had to pay for venues and other expenses that are usually part of the reg fee. So registration fees became increasingly cheap. And that's the reason why I feel it became more justified to create tournaments like Pop Culture IV or UNSW IV, which had a motion about sentient glaciers and a sentient glacier progressive movement acquiescing to the effects of global warming, those kinds of weird, jokey, more creative tournaments. And I was there, in 2011, 2012, I remember a nationals where the motion was about Harry Potter trying, bringing Voldemort to basically trial Wizengamot instead of just killing him in Hogwarts. And the following year in 2012, the ASDC for that year, there was a motion about freeing all Pokemon. So at that time, we had a lot of pop culture motions, but that sort of fell out of popularity at some point in the decade because I think that the debate community got a little bit too carried away with these pop culture motions, so that a lot of older debaters were lamenting the fact that we are supposed to be debating real issues here, real serious issues. So the shift became, if you're paying good money for a debate tournament, you have to be prepared to debate the real, like, important, big impact kind of topics and not just these, like, philosophical pop culture-y type things.
I think we've been pretty clear on our stance, though, regarding those things. Like, I personally don't think that debating memes or pop culture makes you any less of a debater, or that it's less valuable than real-life issues, because in the end, debating is all about the skill itself, refutation, analysis, being able to break down issues into smaller issues, or being able to use clues and context to create arguments. I think the skill is what matters. So I'm happy that online tournaments have allowed people to like be more experimental with their motions and their tournaments as a whole, you know.
Debatable Open was one of those tournaments that tried to be more experimental.
Yeah, it tried to be. And I think we were pretty successful.
I also think that we were pretty successful. But that's for later. I mean, I'm pretty sure both of us have Debatable Open somewhere in our top 5.
Are you sure? I'm kidding. Okay.
Would it be so weird if, like, okay, your number one moment for online debating is like, man, I really liked organizing Debatable Open. And I was just like, oh, this one time I said a bad word. How anticlimactic.
Yeah, so that's your 5th. My 5th place would be debating while I was here in your house. So we're currently recording in Kyle's house. And I was here last year also around...
I think November.
Around November. Yeah. November of 2020. And I joined the tournament with CJ Carlos and Bea Legaspi. And I was debating in Kyle's living room. And I felt very...
exposed.
I felt very exposed to Kyle's family. Also, I felt very out of place because that wasn't my typical setup. Not only was it online debating, which I was not used to, it was online debating in someone else's house. So that was like 2 layers of unfamiliarity that I had to deal with. And I had to deal with people walking in, listening to my speeches. I also wasn't very comfortable because I was just working with my laptop. Usually in my house, I have a 2-monitor setup that allows me to like have a prep document on one page and then the other monitor will have the Discord server. But now having to shift tabs. I know it's a first
world problem.
It's such a first world problem, but it does stack up. Like those small inconveniences and things that you're not used to, they do like affect how you debate. And I remember not doing well at all in that tournament. That was one of the very few tournaments in a while I wasn't in the top 10. Nor did I do very well. Like, I think we died at quarters or semis.
Did you die at semis?
I don't know.
You don't even remember. It was that bad.
It was that bad. All I remember was not being comfortable at all. So, which brings me to, I guess, one thing I want to point out with online debating. It's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. Because I remember being so hyped for tournaments and doing so consistently well. And then suddenly, online debating, I'm suddenly, like, subjected to the elements around me. Like, I have no control over things. I have no control over my internet. I have no control over who gets to hear me. I still can control what I wear, but I don't feel the need to control that given that no one is ever going to see me. So I felt like very out of my element when I was debating that tournament. No offense to your house. I love this house. It's just...
Thanks. My house has thanks.
It's just, this house doesn't love me enough to give me the space to debate in it properly.
Yeah, the privacy.
Yeah.
Like, which is weird because like when you're debating in an on-site tournament, you're not really in a private area. Like, you're surrounded by people. It's just that you get the sense that when people walk by, they're debaters or people who know how debate works. So they're not gonna look at you and like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But here... you see Ate Inday
walking by,
ironing clothes, and then she can hear you, and it's like, oh man, I just want to disappear for a while. But that leads, I think that's a good segue to my number 4, which is also about debating in this house.
This house has seen a lot.
Because, like, to be fair, I agree with you that a lot of things, a lot of our experiences in online debating are based on factors beyond our control. Like, I've heard of examples where a person was debating and the camera was on, and then someone walks into the room and they start mopping because they don't realize that their camera was on. Or in Bicol Debate Festival, I did not consent to being recorded at all because at the time there was some tension going on in the house. I didn't want to preserve for all eternity, like shouting or something that would happen like that. So a lot of it is based on factors beyond our control, and I feel like it's because when we debate from home, you remove that separation between your personal and debate life. Because, like, everyone says that the way that they debate is completely different from the way that they speak in real life, in regular conversations. They don't go like,
Delta.
They don't go like, I have 4 levels of response to your query about what ice cream to get, right? So I feel like, and a lot of times, it could be a negative, like what you were saying. But other times, it might even be a positive. Like, it might give you a little laugh. It might give you a little boost. So in my case, I want to talk about that time when I was doing a training round with some people from UPDS. And then my brother came down and then walked up to me. He didn't know that the camera was on. And then he looked, and then everyone could see him. And then he was just like, hey, I was in the middle of a speech, or I was like coaching at that time. And then he started mocking me, like straight up roasting me. And I remember it was a positive experience because we all had a laugh about it. Like, he was straight up mocking me, like, nyeh, nyeh. It was really hilarious because my brother's personality is, like, he's a tsundere type.
I'm familiar.
He's a very tsundere type that always pretends to not care, but he's such a sweetie. And, like, it's very adorable whenever he tries to pretend that he's some tough guy. It's never in a toxic way. He makes it a point to never be toxic about it. But he never goes like, I love you, kuya. He never says that. Ew. Like, just imagining him say that, it makes me, ugh. But anyway, so that's my number 4. Because it didn't, even though he straight up roasted me, it did not ruin my experience. Actually, it made me happy that he was around. Because if we were on an on-site tournament, he wouldn't even be there to make friends with my friends. Yeah, and laugh with my friends as well. So I think that having factors beyond your control could also be a positive thing. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. What else do I have to say about this?
No, I think for me, being able to separate your debate life and personal life might be a good thing for some, but for others, it might be a bit too daunting.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess in your case, like having a piece of home while you're coaching or helping out in debate, like made the whole experience a lot more cozy or comfy.
Yeah, I think it's to each of their own. But like, it doesn't, when we recommend or when we talk about our own experiences, it doesn't mean that we always have a good time debating from home.
Oh, definitely.
Like, definitely, sometimes I just want to stay away from me. Because sometimes I'm in a very serious mood. And then he walks near me. I'm like, I'm not in the mood for your bullcrap card. I'm not in the mood, man.
Yeah, that makes sense. My 4th experience is also something that took place in your house. Because this house has seen me debate and judge a lot of times more than my own household has. And that would be this experience in particular, judging an NEADC. So it's a East Asian tournament. It's like the regionals. And I remember being cooped up in your computer room because I was judging rounds the whole day. And for me, it was a rather positive experience. Probably because judging is really different from debating. Like, I don't have to speak so much. So I didn't feel as judged. if anything, it just felt like I was listening to people speak and then writing down what they were saying. And then I would give a 5-minute speech later.
Yeah.
You know?
My brother had nothing to do with this. Like, he never interrupted you or anything.
Oh, yeah. That was nice. No one interrupted me at all because
I was just out here studying.
You were out studying. I was just in the computer room. I was just quiet and listening. And I got paid for it. Yeah. So that was like the positive experience because, wow, I earned money for something that I would usually have to travel for.
Yeah.
Because I would have probably judged any ADC in an on-site tournament setting. But it would have been more draining. I would have had to go abroad, which is usually a good thing, you know. But like in this economy, in this pandemic, no, man. So being able to do that, still get paid, and have the experience of exposing myself to different debaters and different ideas, all from the comfort of my boyfriend's house, is a overall positive experience for me.
To be honest, I thought you were gonna say something about Carl again.
No,
because
no.
I remember, since you were talking about like a positive experience that you had from my home, I remember the time when you were speaking and then my brother like passed by and then he was like, "Oh damn!" Do you remember that? He passed by. I was like, "Oh damn!"
Because I was being snarky. I said something snarky about. Oh man, I don't even remember what I said. I just remember it being very snarky. And then I heard your brother go, "Oh damn!" And I was like, "What?"
Oh, damn.
Like, very nice commentary. But anyway, that was my number 4 experience judging any ADC. I got exposed to good ideas, good debaters, good money, all while judging in the comfort of my boyfriend's home. Oh, it's a win-win-win situation. And I didn't have to yell or
nice.
feel pressured. I didn't feel pressured at all because I wasn't a competing judge in a sense. But I ranked also. I think I was 3rd or 4th best judge.
So you ranked, but you weren't competing?
No, I didn't know I was competing because I was an invited judge.
Oh, because like the system there is, if you're an invited judge, you can't rank.
In a lot of places, yeah.
But for this one, it was a pleasant surprise that you could rank.
Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I ranked. I was also pleasantly surprised I broke because I thought I did badly. Because again, there's no way to gauge. Oh, that's another thing I want to point out. With online debating, there's no way to gauge if you're doing the right thing or not. Because if you're doing debate on site, if you're speaking, right, you could tell if the judges are writing down your ideas or not.
Yeah.
Or receiving the concepts well, and then you can change your strategy midway. It's the same with judging. You could tell if you need to sort of appease a particular team more or explain a particular decision more than others. So here, I didn't have any way to gauge it, and I was really nervous. But overall, it ended up okay.
But I guess that's a double-sided. I think it's a two-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, you don't know how other people are reacting as opposed to an on-site tournament where you can make adjustments based on people's reactions.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I feel like a lot of people would experience a lot of anxiety from, just speaking and finding that the judge isn't really writing a lot from your speech. So I guess that in some instances, being able to, just close the camera and then you're not able to see what the judge is writing or what faces your opponents are making is very nice and liberating for you because you don't have to care about those things. The only thing that you have to care about are the ideas in your speech. So it can be a good thing. It can be a liberating thing. It can also be a restricting thing.
Again,
it depends on your strategy when it comes to debating. It just so happens that when you're judging, you like looking at the faces of the people that you're judging.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact, when it comes to debating, you're the complete opposite. You'd prefer not to see them. Yeah.
When I'm debating, I like being very focused on my ideas and not really care about my performance. Or my debate as a performance.
Yeah.
Though there are instances, of course, that are exceptions. Like nationals, you gotta perform. You gotta sort of care a bit more about what you're saying and how you're presenting yourself, especially if you're being recorded. But that's all.
Yeah. Meanwhile, ako naman, I just don't like... I always prefer to see, these people reacting in real time. Yeah, it's not, I feel more anxiety when I don't see them. Like in any case. So I guess it's one of those things talaga that it depends on how you prefer debating or what you look for in a debate experience. And since we're talking about like win-win-win scenarios, my number 3 is actually our win in BIFest, in Bicol Debate Festival, because it was my very first win in an online debate competition. It was also my very first win in general, my very first championship.
Yay!
Yeah, and I'm very happy that my very first championship was with you. And the thing about it is, it's not just the fact that we won, because to be honest, when we won, I was just like, yay, we won! And then after I was like, okay, I was just fine with it. It wasn't very impactful, but the reason why it's at number 3 isn't because of the fact that we won, but it's because I felt the freest I've ever been when debating in that tournament. Because, first of all, I didn't feel like there was a lot of money on the line. Because, when I remember when I was in high school and we go to, and also to a certain extent in college, whenever I go to nationals or Asians, people would always tell me something like, you have to win. You have to want to win. Because otherwise, sayang yung reg fee. And I felt like here, I didn't feel constrained to try to be the perfect debater because I didn't feel like a lot of money was on the line. So it gave me like an incredible amount of freedom to just talk about whatever I wanted, like literally whatever I wanted. Another factor that comes into this is the fact that I was with you. Because I can completely trust you to talk about the basic stuff that I don't like thinking about.
Yep.
So I can just straight up 100% talk about, Hegelian dialectic. 100% I can talk about, Eastern philosophy, for some reason, phenomenology. And people appreciated that for me because usually whenever I talk about those things, people think it comes out of nowhere. And to be honest, it does most of the time come out of nowhere. And it's not what you expect. But I feel like in that context, in BIFest, because you did such a great job of covering all the basics, everything that people expect, that gave me more room to talk about things that people did not expect. Which is, for me, the greatest thing about debating is the ability to trust your partner and be able to talk about whatever you want. And I know for a fact, like, I don't really like talking about those things, but I know that you love talking about those basic things.
I do.
Except for the final round where I had to do PM because it just so happens that the basic stuff for that motion were already philosophy stuff.
Yeah.
And you didn't like talking about those at all.
Yeah, so we did the last minute switch. But I guess like that only applies in opening half. But in closing half, you still have a lot of freedom. But it also doesn't come out of nowhere because I do a pretty good job of connecting it with the rest of it. I'm the stitcher in our team.
Yeah, that's the reason why. Yeah, that's the reason why whenever you talk about teaming up with me, especially in closing, you always describe yourself as, clarifying what I meant. Because I give really good ideas, but sometimes, if I'm not clear enough about it, it seems like it might be irrelevant or it might not be as strong as it could be. But because of your intervention, both in prep and during the debate, it becomes just that much stronger. So I think that, the thing I love about our team up, is that I feel like we're more than the sum of our parts.
Yeah.
Our strengths alone, we're both very strong in our respective fields, right? I feel like you're much more structured than I am, but I can go crazier about the ideas than you do. But when we're together in a team, we just complement each other to such an extent that we can be better than we could ever be just alone. And that's what I liked about BIFest. That's why that win meant so much to me. It's not because I could put it in my CV or I could let's be honest, it's not because I could let you put it in my CV because you track my CV for me.
Yes, I do.
But it's mostly because, the journey of getting there. It's just like, I didn't have to feel constrained to perform. It was just me being myself. Like my unfiltered stream of consciousness, but I kind of tweaked it so that it would be more relevant to debate. But that's really how I think. Yeah. So that's why it was very meaningful to me.
I also have BiFest as my third, and I think I covered some of the reasons why. But I think you forgot to mention, or you forgot entirely, that this was our first exposure to online debating.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because the last time that we debated together, the last time that we debated together in BP before BiFest last year was in like 2017.
Yeah, nationals.
Yeah, like 3 years ago.
And then we haven't done a BP tournament together since. And like, honestly, when we team up with others in Asians, our dynamic is different because there's a person.
Completely different.
Like, there's a third person to take into consideration. I mean, it's not a bad thing, obviously, but it's a very different feeling.
Yeah, you have to adjust, as opposed to like, but it's just the two of us, you don't have to adjust at all.
Yeah, and we don't have to talk at all when it's just the two of us. Like, we just psychic our way through prep. But so that was our first exposure to online debating, period. And I remember, like, I didn't know how Discord worked. I was still, like, tinkering with Discord at the time. I remember did we prep using Zoom or something?
I remember we prepped with GDoc.
We prepped with GDoc, but how were we talking to each other? Did we not talk to each other?
I think we did talk to each other. I think it was through Zoom, yeah.
Yeah, so we were on a Zoom call, and then we were on Discord, and then we were on GDoc, and I remember being so overwhelmed. But I was having a really fun time, because it was with you, and I was just doing my thing, you were doing your thing. You didn't have to police me, I didn't have to police you. I barely saw what you were typing in your GDoc, because when we prep, we would separate the screen, separate the pages. Pages.
So we'd prep on completely different pages.
Yeah, and then we'd notice none of our ideas would overlap. That was great. I was like, what a coincidence.
It's only sometimes you go like, I think this could supplement your idea. Or vice versa. You would say, you can take this na lang.
Yeah.
And that would be very nice. But sobrang unlikely, no? It is very unlikely for a team to just not have the same ideas at all when prepping for the same thing.
Probably because we know what to avoid. Like, when an idea comes up, we're like, oh, Philo. I say, nah, Kaz got this. And then when I see you don't got it, I'll give it to you. But what are the odds that you don't got it? So you probably got it. So I don't have to worry about it so much. So that's one reason I liked it. The other would be, I'm very comfortable doing last minute risky things with you. Like, our finals, for example, we switch positions. I think we've mentioned that already. And I would usually panic if that was the case. Like, we didn't prepare for that. We haven't prepped for that. We've never.
I have never PM'd for you, ever.
I've never been deputy for you. But we decided, you know what? Like, I don't know anything about Philo. You know a lot about Philo. I'm good at tinkering with motions. So leave me at deputy. And it worked out fine. So that's why I liked it also. I guess I also enjoyed the fact that there were so many new faces or voices.
New voices.
I don't know what to refer to them as, but because it was an online tournament and it's my first time being exposed to it, there were so many names that I didn't know and so many newbies again. And I was like, wow, look at this. Like, so many debaters from BCall in particular are joining this tournament, and I haven't seen this circuit as active as it was, like a few years back. So it was very nice to be exposed to that again, to see people with like still wide eyes and like a lot of dreams and
a degree of innocence.
Yeah, a degree of innocence in debating. It was nice to be exposed to that crowd again, as opposed to, the people in our circles in on-site tournaments. Like, after a few rounds, the brackets we end up in are so serious and like so the tension is just like something you could cut with a butter knife, and I didn't like it. It was too serious for my taste. So being online and just being with people who were just having a good time was just a nice change of pace.
Well, speaking of innocence, and I have to lower the tone of my voice. Because this next one for me, this is my number 2. It's more serious than any other thing that I've talked about so far, which is the drafting of the Debatable ZTP or Zero Tolerance Policy Against Harassment. And I'm speaking as a person who has actually experienced like a level of sexual harassment. I'm not comfortable talking about the details of that, but it was really important for me to talk about. It was really important for me to create a policy to sort of ensure or help ensure a safe space for, again, those very innocent people that we're talking about. We want to protect their ability to enjoy debate. Because the thing about online debating is it's literally the wild, wild west out here where there's no set rules for anything. Like, in one of the tournaments that we edge scored in, Halcyon Scholastic Debates, you weren't there, and I don't think that you remember this, but there was a time when someone unmuted themselves just to say the N-word, and like, the Orcom didn't know how to deal with it, because since it was on Discord, and there were so many people on convening, they weren't really able to pinpoint who exactly it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing is like, we just talked about the fact that we used GDocs for Bifest. Later on, when it came around to Australs, we found out that they banned GDocs. And to be honest, I don't know why, but it just gives, I suppose they did it because like your partner can do real-time edits during your speech, which we didn't do. But like now that I'm thinking about it, you could actually do that.
Is that cheating though? Isn't that the equivalent of passing notes in the middle of a round?
I don't think that you're allowed to pass notes to a person who's speaking during
if
the
they're
round.
speaking. Oh, okay, yeah.
So I think like even the way that we prep, there's a lot of ambiguity with it. So I just wanted to give some sort of clarity with the policy that we wrote. It was more than 10 pages long, and it kind of felt too technical sometimes to write, but there were previous tournaments where there were zero tolerance policies on harassment.
I guess give a bit of a summary first of what it is for our listeners who aren't aware.
Yeah. So a zero tolerance policy on harassment is basically saying that if you are known to the community or are reasonably suspected to be a harasser, be it a sexual harasser or otherwise, then the tournament organizer has the right to prevent your participation at any stage of the tournament. And it was a very nice goal to have because you really do want to create these safe spaces. But there have been sometimes, there has been a tournament where there were lots of ambiguities in the way that a ZTP has to be implemented. And that created a lot of delays and there was a lot of drama surrounding it. And I don't want to talk about that. But I wanted Debatable to have its own contribution to that discourse by creating a more comprehensive policy. And I remember like I worked on that literally Christmas Day. I was still writing the policy on Christmas Day because, I wanted it to be, I guess, like a Christmas gift to our equity team. And we had an amazing equity team. We had Akeem, we had Ashley, we had Mika as well. And we had Jillian sit in as part of our ad hoc equity panel for a particular case that we handled. So anyway, I feel like that was a very impactful part of my experience in online debating. It's the idea that there are so many things that we do not yet know how to deal with. So be it harassment, be it cheating, be it the use of N-words or other equity violations. We just don't have policies for that are tailored to the online space that we have to change and work towards in order to make everyone as happy as they could be. But I still feel that I recognize that the ZTP that even I made, it's not really perfect. There are lots of things that we can iron out. For example, I didn't really consider how we would treat a person who is alleged to have harassed someone at the time that the offending party is a minor. Like, how would we deal with those cases? I think it's a question that not only tournament organizers, but also the rest of the debate community should talk about. And like, there's also like the question of when can we allow them to come back? A lot of people would definitely say never let them come back. But other people would say, why don't we prioritize rehabilitation as well? So it's one of those things that it could be a debate in itself, but we have to apply it more generously to the discretion of individual tournament organizers until such a time that we can have a consensus as the community.
So we should probably have a conversation about that, but I don't know what the proper avenues are or the proper spaces to have them, because it seems like having them online is very unproductive. And having them through figureheads is also rather unproductive. So we're not sure how to go about it. So hopefully, I guess every tournament should just do what they deem is best for themselves first.
Yeah. And think through it. Think through it.
Obviously.
Whenever you make a policy, even in debate speeches, you want to make sure that every prong of the policy is, layered with a principle. And that's what we try to do with our ZTP. But I feel like if any tournament wants to use a debatable ZTP or otherwise, or make tweaks to that policy that we made, they should be able to do so, provided that they really reason out why they made the changes that they made.
Yeah, if you want to ask more questions about it, or just want to apply it to your own tournament but are unsure how to, you can reach out to us and we'll help you out. This is an advocacy already, and we want to help out the community in whatever way we can. So that was your number 2?
That was my number 2. It wasn't as bombastic as the Bifest ones, but I feel like I just had to get it out there because it wasn't always a positive experience for me. I didn't really enjoy my Christmas so much because I was working on this, but I knew that I wouldn't feel alright with myself if I wasn't satisfied with the ZTP.
So that was your number 2. My number 2 was also related to Debatable, but not Debatable itself yet. Or not Debatable Open itself yet. It was the lead up to Debatable Open, so all the background preparation that not a lot of people get to see or hear about, but it's a lot of work. So while Kyle was doing the ZTP, I was sending out so many emails, I was fixing Excel sheets, I was posting and scheduling the pub mats, which were so cute, by the way.
Thank you, Jill Icardo.
Yes, once again, thank you, Jill Icardo. If you want to hire her for your projects, you really, really should. Her rates are super reasonable. You should tip her very well, and you should support your local artists. But anyway, I got sidetracked. So I like the preparations to Debatable Open, really, really a lot. So I enjoyed conceptualizing the stuff. I enjoyed even drafting the emails was kind of fun. Email blasts. Ooh, so fun.
Oof. I love sending 300 emails a day.
I love being able to send 300 emails a day and then seeing them go into the sent box. And then seeing people reply to emails and actually following directions. I
think you're the only one who says that. I think you're the only one who says that.
I'm probably the only one who says that, but it really was a joy to organize a tournament. I had to think about, it felt like chess. Because I had to think about things 5 steps in advance. And I had to anticipate all the possible, what do you call those? Hiccups? All the possible hiccups that would come our way. And I felt like I managed to avoid most of them. So, you don't see it, but behind the scenes, there's so many things that were avoided. We had to make sure the schedule made sense. We avoided, for example, a lot of teams pulling out. We avoided, for example, miscommunications between judges and debaters, stuff like that. And I felt like it's super satisfying to be able to fix those things. So if you are an institution or a person thinking of planning a tournament, go for it, but also realize it's not a walk in the park. Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 aren't just you collecting information. It's you knowing how to use that information properly to make the tournament run smoothly. And if you're not sure how to fix your Excel sheets or to fix your G forms, you're going to have a hard time. So just keep those in mind if you ever want to open your own tournament for memes or any other theme or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that we gave ourselves even more work because our idea for Debatable was, let's not have an edge score. Let's make individual post-debate analyses. So how did you find the process of interviewing 9 different people?
At first it was so daunting because I also remember having to schedule all of those interviews. I had to set limits on, for example, when they could send in the motions. I had to constantly be in contact with them. It was really fun though, because once the interview started, I would stop being an organizer and suddenly I would be a debater who was curious about ideas. So there were two modes that I was constantly on. I was either on an organizer mode or just a wide-eyed, innocent debater who wanted to learn from the people she looked up to. And that was really a fun experience. That was my personal take on it though.
Yeah, so I get that because a lot of the people who we interviewed, like Giano and Renee, they were so good. And I remember even when I was in high school, I would look up to these people and I'd always be in awe of who they are and what they've been through, what they've achieved, how they contribute to society. But it's also very refreshing to talk to your peers. Like, we talked to Venti, we talked to Kitty. There are batchmates. So it's also like talking to our friends about things that they're very passionate about, which was very nice because I always maintain that whenever I talk to a nerd, a nerd like us, it's always very nice to talk about things that they are passionate about, because I love seeing people be passionate about things, because it allows me to experience it from their points of view as well. And that's the reason why we even had this system of having individual motion contributors, so that they could be able to talk about the things that they are the most passionate about, because that's the best way for us to get the most amount of content. Not for clout, but like content as an educational content for people. Which again leads us to my top one. My number one is Debatable Open, as in the tournament proper. So your top two was about preparations. Mine is about the day itself. And okay, I will be the first to admit that I wasn't there as much as I wanted to be on the first day. I feel like you're the one who's I feel like you have more ascendancy to talk about like what happened on the day itself. But in my case, I was going back and forth between worrying about Debatable Open and also worrying about the two final exams that I had on that same day. I had two final exams on that day. So like I had zero sleep. I've been studying for the past like 36 hours, and I had an exam the next day as well. And my entire week leading up to Debatable Open was just a bunch of exams. I had several property exams that week. I had a sales exam as well. And now I had two transportation final exams, an oral one and a written one on the same day. So it was really, really difficult for me. And I remember that I was talking to my friend who was my classmate, and I was telling him that I am so worried because I felt so unprepared for the exams. And at the same time, whenever I did study, I felt anxious that I wasn't able to help the rest of our organizing committee with Debatable. So I tried to balance it. I don't think I was able to balance it well. I feel like I sort of leaned towards the ACAD side more.
I mean, that's justified.
Yeah, but I feel like, it's not necessarily a negative experience, but it was definitely very intense as an experience for me to, have to balance and juggle those things. But I feel like it was still worth it at the end, because the thing about ending a very tiring day or a very intense day, and sometimes you don't wanna know what happens next because it's more of the same. But in my case, it was more of, this was the last lap in my semester, and I really, really wanted to see what Debatable was going to turn out. So the way that I looked at it was, it's a very intense experience, but when I endure it, it's going to lead to much more positive experiences down the line. And I could have made my top one about the end of Debatable when we got like compliments, we got people telling us that it was a very good tournament or that it meant a lot to them. And, those are really great experiences for me as well. But the most impactful part of it was just the overwhelming experience of having to balance two very huge, very important aspects of your life and not thinking that they could coexist. But at the end of the day, realizing that they could definitely coexist. It'll take some work, but it's definitely not impossible to have it all without sacrificing anything.
So, I guess it's no surprise that my top one was also Debatable Open proper, but for different reasons.
Extension, Shanna, extension.
This is my extension speech for Kyle's explanation. But I think there are a few things I want to highlight or want to reminisce on. Because honestly, Debatable Open felt like giving birth to a child. If the number 2 was the preparation, that was like the 9 months I was pregnant. Debatable Open was as painful as giving birth to a child and as satisfying as seeing your baby. There's no other way I would describe it. So day 1, I was a mess. Like, I was an absolute mess. The delays were driving me crazy. We broke the tabber, because we were just too many. We didn't expect to be this many, and I guess Tabber didn't expect to ever handle a tournament with this many participants.
Yeah, and I don't think we could have foreseen that as well, because
we didn't. We couldn't. So
for all intents and purposes, we were thinking that Tabber was just basically stable, regardless of how many people tried to access it.
Yeah, and we didn't understand the behind the scenes of it, which is our fault.
Yeah,
honestly.
definitely.
Like, we should have asked and we should have been aware of it. But that caused like major issues. The delays as well because of the tab system, as well as the people not submitting their ballots on time. People getting disconnected. Like, if you have internet issues, it suddenly becomes my problem also, because that would mean that you're delaying the tournament. Yeah. That means that I also have to be in contact constantly with people who get disconnected. So I remember all my windows were open. I remember I meant my laptop windows. I remember having so many tabs just open in my head and on my monitors. I was writing down things left and right on post-it notes. I felt like a one-woman team, because a lot of our team was also debating. A lot of our team were given other assignments, and I didn't want to overburden them.
Yeah.
And I'm the type that overburdens myself, which is the problem. So I remember taking on a lot of responsibilities that I should have probably delegated a lot more. And I'm really thankful that Jillian Sandigan was there as my co-convener at the day 1, I mean, no offense to you, but she was de facto...
Absolutely none taken.
She was de facto co-convener of day 1, dealing with just as much things as I was, if sometimes probably even more, because I was busy dealing with tabs and she would have to deal with the participants. And it was a very draining and tiring experience. But I remember going to sleep that evening. I was just knocked out, but I was very satisfied as well, knowing that we made it through day 1 alive.
Yeah, I think you're the kind of person who would get so overwhelmed about the amount of work that you'd have to do. But you also find a kind of joy in solving a lot of small problems throughout the day, because you feel like, oh, I'm so great at this. I'm solving a lot of problems. So I think you were just holding yourself to a very high standard that we ended up not being able to fulfill. Because I think all things considered, the delay wasn't that bad. There was a significant delay, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. That's the tagline for the tournament. Not as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, so that's one. Those were a few pointers. I also want to give a shout out to our runners, because
our runners were amazing.
They were amazing.
They were amazing.
So if you've ever been if you competed in Debatable Open and you were bugged by our runners, then, be thankful they bugged you, because they kept the tournament not as delayed as it could have been.
Not as bad as it could have been.
Not as bad as it could have been. So they made sure that we stayed on track for most of it. And I'm really grateful for them. I would name them all if I could. But I just don't have the memory for that. But I love them all the same. So that's another thing I want to point out. I guess the last would be, day 2 felt a lot less burdensome. Is that the term, burdensome?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, you were there already, which took a lot of load off my shoulders for one. But two, since there were less teams to deal with, given how you only deal with the top teams at the time, it wasn't as like daunting as it could have been. Though we did face one big issue, which was the random pull out in the middle of Octo finals.
Yeah, like okay. For
you,
people who weren't there,
I'll let you tell the story.
For people who weren't there, what happened was we were supposed to have Octo finals, and the theme was international relations. And I was looking forward to that theme so much because there was a particular motion there that Giano made when in December, which was about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris giving, I think, amnesty to Trump in exchange for legitimizing or recognizing the legitimacy of the elections, right? So the trade-off there was, should we prosecute Trump or should we make sure that Trump gets out of the way as soon as we can? And in December, the context was completely different. But during the days right before Debatable open, it became much more exciting, but kind of in a sad way because you found the terrorists that were storming the Capitol building in the United States, trying to prevent the recognition of Joe Biden as the winner. So we thought that motion aged like fine wine talaga. It aged so beautifully. It aged like Robert Downey Jr., that kind of stuff. And then, so I announced the info slides. And then right before I announced the motions themselves, you interrupted me. Nina interrupted me, going like, wait, someone pulled out. So, so we had to cancel that round because after a while we determined that, it would have been unfair if we gave everyone the opportunity to, Google the topics already
based on the
info slides because it took too long to determine like, really, they pulled out? What happened? Ganyan, ganyan. Is there a way to make them not pull out? Those kinds of things. So we're not trying to shame the team that pulled out. But what we wanted to point out was, especially when it comes to online tournaments, but it also applies broadly to all tournaments, whenever you do or do not do something, it will inevitably, in many different ways that you might not even be aware of at the time, it will affect everyone else in that tournament.
Yep.
Be it a late ballot that's going to delay the entire tournament, or you accidentally putting a decimal point where it shouldn't be in. It's a small mistake. It's just literally one dot in your ballot. But it's going to change how the rest of the tournament will operate. It will make like a domino effect of delays and problems for everyone. So, ayun, it's just a reminder for y'alls. But that's what happened in day 2. And I had to handle that because I promised you that after day 1, I'm like, I got this. Okay, I got this. I don't want you to suffer like this again.
Thank you. That was helpful. I mean, it genuinely was, though. So that was our top 5 each for online debate experiences. As you can tell, we haven't experienced a lot compared to others who are just obsessed with debating online. And I won't name any of you. Like, you do you if that's your kink or if that's what you're into. But I cannot imagine doing this every weekend or doing some derivative of this every weekend, like either judging or debating or ad scoring or organizing a tournament.
And some people really do come to mind.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're listening to this and someone comes to mind, like, tell them to take a break. Or if you're that person who...
You might want to take a break.
Like, it's
But we're not judging. We're not judging.
If it makes you happy, go ahead. But I do want to bring up some honorable mentions to our top 5.
Yeah, okay, go.
Like, some things that I didn't make it to my top 5, but I was debating on being on the top 5. The first one would be the THS cheating case we dealt with. So Kyle and I ad scored the tournament together, and there was a cheating case that we had to deal with. And I remember that was the Well, I've dealt with cheating cases before in tournaments, but that's the first time I've had to deal with one online, and it was so much harder to determine whether they did cheat or not.
Yeah, I remember we had to do some linguistic analysis, pa. Like,
Yeah.
like, what do you think that they meant when they said this? And we're like, in the context of the rest of the sentence, I think that this phrase, those kinds of analysis, and, well, we didn't make it public. We didn't name and shame them because, they were novices, and you wanted to protect, people who...
it was an honest mistake.
It was an honest mistake. Like, the way that I framed it when I was questioning them was, I think you're supposed to know that this was wrong. But I don't blame you if you don't really grasp the full consequences of this action. So we didn't make a big deal out of it. And, nothing really bad happened to the rest of the tournament. But some corrections definitely had to be made.
Yeah. So that's one. The other thing that really was prominent for me was I kept getting blue screen of death on my laptop. So my laptop's getting kind of old, and I guess it cannot handle having Discord open and Zoom open and GDocs open all at the same time. So there were times when I would be judging that my screen would just suddenly turn blue and shut down on me. And I remember being so panicked about it, but luckily I had my phone to really quickly shift to. So I didn't really delay any tournaments I joined or delay any rounds I was part of. But it was, daunting, knowing that at any moment my laptop could die on me. Or, I could get disconnected at any moment. So if you're a Filipino listening to this, then you know the pain, our internet connections are not stable at all here, and you could get disconnected at any moment. So, yeah. I don't know.
So that's it. Those are your only two honorable mentions.
Yeah, I guess the rest are pretty generic. So I have a semis curse in LIV, and I debated LIV online, and I still died at semis. So that curse is still alive, sadly, even if it's online now. I guess some things never change. And generic ad scoring, I guess, would be something I'd point out. Like, it's very different doing it online. It feels just the same as judging or debating would.
Yeah.
Like, the lines between rules become very blurred because you're all just on the same platform. Like, there's no separate room for AdScore like there usually is. There's no designated roles. I mean, there is roles assigned to you in Discord, but really in the end, it doesn't matter.
All tournaments have separate roles for edge score.
Yeah. So it feels like the lines get blurred a lot, which I don't know if I like or dislike. All I know is that it is noticeable.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, That's it. That's my honorable mentions. Do you have any?
Well, I guess I do have some honorable mentions. I did. There was this one time where I was doing a speech, and then some delivery person rang the doorbell, and I was the only one in the house. So I had to bring my laptop outside of the house and then make the transaction as I was speaking.
When was this?
It was...
Oh my gosh.
No, it was in Bicol Debate Festival.
I didn't notice.
You didn't notice because...
Amazing.
Yeah, because I was amazing. I mean, we weren't together. We weren't physically together then. But that was very stressful for me. It was just very fortuitous that I was talking about philosophy the entire time. So, I could get sidetracked or whatever. It will not stop me from talking about something I'm actually very passionate about. Other than that, I think my internet naman, I've been very fortunate that I've had the privilege of having a relatively stable internet connection. Except, there are sometimes I do get disconnected. And sometimes in the worst situations, like during class recitations or during exams, those are the worst. But those aren't really, super connected to online debating.
Yeah.
So I guess you can end it here.
Yeah.
That's it for this, surprisingly long episode on our online debate experiences.
Hopefully it was entertaining and hopefully you got some lessons out of this. The point being, online debating is a new space. It's relatively experimental. If you're not into it, that's fine. If you are into it, that's great. If you're not sure, then hopefully this episode helped you figure out that there are some people who are just as unsure as you are. Kyle and I still don't know if we genuinely like online debating. We've tried all possible facets of it. Unless there's another facet we're not aware of. But we've tried them all. Debating, judging, ad scoring, organizing.
Observing as well. We forgot observing.
Oh yeah, observing. Observing is a thing as well. I would say that we kind of like it sometimes and kind of don't like it sometimes. Which I guess is the general experience a lot of you will face as well.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. And that's, I guess, the takeaway of this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you had a good time listening. If you're doing something else, focus once again on what you're doing and don't use us as a procrastination tool. And that's it for this episode of Debatable. Thank you for listening. We'll see you soon. Hopefully. Hopefully since we have more time to record now. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.